Today we are looking over the radio, reader, and rap scripts. We're also going to talk about the next assignment due for next Tuesday, which is 2 story ideas, which will start the original reporting that you're going to do for the class. So you'll have a week in order to come up with a couple of story ideas. We'll talk about it. And hopefully you've already got some thoughts as to what you could report on. But if you don't, usually when we go around and talk about it, people have lots of ideas to help other people out. Those are always welcome. As a group of people actually getting together, it's a great opportunity to share leads or that type of thing. So hopefully that'll happen somewhat. Today we're going to read over readers and raps. Please try to be constructive in your feedback. I know you always are, but try to make it sound that way as well. Looking ahead to what's coming up, let's see. So next Thursday, next Thursday, Thursday of next week is a mandatory meeting day, right? That's the day we all have to come in on September 21st. And that's when we'll be sharing those factual news stories together. And as I said, hopefully that's when the collective brain will help us punch those stories into a doable form. So those listening and streaming, remember September 21st is a mandatory attendance day, and we should have our 2 story ideas in a couple days before then, so I have a chance to look them over and see what I think about them. Cool. All right, so radio, reader, and rap. Let us refresh our memories as to what that is. So here was the assignment, just to remind ourselves. Good Lord, there's a lot in there for 2 tiny pieces of writing, huh? Write 2 short radio news stories based on stories you find in local news media. Right? Write 1 radio reader, 30 seconds, and a rap, 45 seconds. There are links to examples of radio script format for you to imitate, so those were in there. Follow the required format. Your script should be all caps, 12-point, Courier fonts, and 1-inch margins. Identify your script professionally. In other words, each script should have a slug line, so title, reporter, total runtime at the top left. That's how it's done. And so how to do it, you were to find 2 news stories currently in print. You want to adapt for radio. Note down the exact source of the 2 stories and attribute the information to its source in your script. So that'll be for next time. Just remember, whenever you're using other people's reporting, you absolutely have to attribute it somehow. Maybe not to the actual journalist, but maybe just to the source, the newspaper, or wherever would be good. Use real facts. Don't make this up. One of your stories will require a direct quote. So which one is that needs a quote?
Rap.
A rap. Yeah, it's called an actuality in radio, and it's the rap because you wrap your writing around a quote. And then there were just some specifics in terms of extracting the quote, explaining what the reader is, explaining what a rap is with the actuality, and of course the rap was more lengthy because it had an anchor. It had the rap itself with an actuality, and it had a lockout at the end. So cool. Now that we know what we did, let's see if we can read some. Anybody like to volunteer? Jenny, and then Nick, and then JP. Oh my God, let's volunteer one at a time.
I welcome harsh criticism because I need to learn.
Harsh. We're not in the business of harsh here. There we are. Fonts went kind of crazy here. Okay, right. All right. Would you like to read it, Jenny? Go ahead.
Start from the slug or from...
You can read or I can read. No, let's just read what would be on air. So the start of it.
Dogs and cats evacuated from Fort Lauderdale arrived in the Bay Area Thursday before Hurricane Irma struck. 92 cats and 60 dogs were brought from Broward County to Hayward. The evacuation was arranged to make room for prospective pets caught in Irma's fury. Pet care was divided amongst the Animal Rescue Foundation, East Bay SPCA, and Berkeley Humane Society. Although well, the animals were medically evaluated before being put up for adoption this week. Local shelters are already pushing their capacity. ARF's executive director encouraged donations, fosters, and spare carriers.
Okay, comments for Jenny? Those of you,
Was
yeah,
it supposed to mention the reporter's name in it at all, or
right, attribution. So Jenny remembered that she forgot the
not the
attribution.
attribution to where she got the source from, but the person actually reading it, the anchor?
Well, it has neither, so it's either would be sufficient.
Okay.
But I mean, if it was a reporter for the Chronicle, let's say, I'd attribute it to the Chronicle versus the
But like if it
reporter.
was somebody that was reading it for a specific station, would you say, my name is so-and-so from KAGR?
No, I don't hear, yeah, at the beginning of the show, but not for each individual
Okay.
item. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the point. Start of the show. So this isn't an anchor script necessarily, just this the
Okay.
reader. JP?
I would just also suggest that you say what state Broward County is in. Because you're pouring in the Bay Area.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't
Possible.
say Florida anywhere.
Oh, I thought I would do that in the beginning because I didn't want to sound redundant, so I thought it would be good to at least start with Fort Lauderdale and then...
But where's
Yeah.
Fort Lauderdale?
Oh, okay. Okay, good point.
Well, I think people
Sure.
know where Fort Lauderdale is.
You can't assume.
can't-
Well, whatever.
Yeah, you're right.
If you had a question, it's already an interesting point. Yeah. Is it Broward or Broward? And how do you guys know that?
Broward.
Howard.
Broward?
Oh, I don't know. I watch Pipples and Parolees, and that's where they are, but they all say it differently because none
Oh,
of them
really?
are from there.
So we should spell it out, like Broward or Broward. I'm not sure, especially if it's Broward. I would have read it Brower because of eyebrow, but you read it Broward, and I assume probably
Broward?
So spell out Broward and...
Yeah, just because your anchor would want to know that. To make room for prospective pets. I was wondering prospective pets. I guess now that I think it over, I realize you mean, yeah, you could adopt them so that the pet is possibly your pet to adopt, right?
Essentially, the article was saying they wanted to clear out the shelter of the animals they currently had so that after Irma hit, any shelters that they rescued from the aftermath, they could put in there.
Gotcha. So I was just trying to listen to get the, again, as a listener would listen who can't read it and didn't read the original article, prospective pets hung me up a little bit. Again, maybe it's just me. And the final sentence, ARFs, ARFs, ARF.
It is called ARF.
It's ARF for
Yeah,
pets.
and so
I love it.
thought I would go ahead and
ARFs.
say it in the few lines above, Animal Rescue Foundation.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting point because this should be read by the anchor as ARFs. That's true. If you wanted them to read it as ARF, so you're not making a mistake here, but if you wanted them to read it as ARF, you would have written it out like that. So that's excellent. You didn't make no mistake there. ARF's executive director encouraged donations, fosters, and spare carriers. So donations I get because it's quite an easy kind of noun. They're encouraging you to make donations. To make fosters or to, you know what I mean? When I get to fosters and spare carriers, I don't, the construction of the sentence which pulls those three things together works for the first but less for the second and third. Gotcha. Good timing. Nika has a comment?
You could have said, ARF's executive director encouraged donations, spare carriers, and for fosters to step up.
Yeah, something like that.
I would have loved to. I was just trying to crunch everything in time.
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
don't know what to do.
Yeah, the ultimate, as God, even the textbook was telling us last week that under clarity or understandability kind of trumps grammatically being correct. So, but yeah, great job. And it'll be easier to time it out if you stick to the font to the 12-point Courier. That's it.
Good evening. This is Nicholas Winstead from KRUP. The time is 12 o'clock. In world news, Korean theme park Lot World has come under fire and scrutiny for their recent addition to their haunted house called Zombie Meat, which features a naked, bloody Korean woman in a meat package with the price of 450 won. Guests were outraged, saying even if it's Halloween, this is shocking. They've gone too far, even calling it cannibalism. Lot World has even responded by saying, we can't just ask them to get rid of this or include this to the people since they are subcontractors. The prop was taken down August 4th due to backlash. This is This is Nicholas Winstead from KRUP, and is the meat on sale?
There we go. It was funny, but not too well done. So the issue here is that the rap is supposed to be another person talking, not you reading that. You know what I mean? So you got the quotes there, but you wouldn't set up a quote by saying, for instance, if, like basically all these sound bites should be read by somebody on tape. See what I mean?
Well, wouldn't it be written on tape? I'm just reading what they're saying.
Yeah, but the nature of the rap, and if you listen to the audio examples that we posted, is basically you have a reporter telling us the story, and they stop, and we play a section of tape of somebody talking that has the reporter is taped, and then the reporter comes back and tells the story. That's the way the rap works. Okay, so that wasn't clear. Nonetheless, this one had potential. You would have written it differently. You might have used these same actualities, but you would have written it differently. Like, for instance, guests were outraged saying, so, you could simply, you could set it up as one guest was outraged and then play the actual quote. Even if it's Halloween, this is shocking, they've gone too far, right? And then you'd have to come back in and set up the next one. I'd say probably you'd paraphrase cannibalism and put that in. But a representative of Lottie World responded, and then you could play that actuality. We can't just ask them to get rid of this or include this, et cetera, et cetera. What part is the actual quote, by the way? There's two.
We can't just ask them. That was the quote. The whole thing.
You can't just ask them. Okay, what about?
Including to the subcontractors part.
Right. So there's an indication of a quote here, and there's also a quote there. So I was just wondering where it begins, actually. All right. So it's also out of format. This should be all caps, and the sound bites should be lowercase. So that's a problem with what we set up as a format. Your TRT should be up in the top with a 3-line slug. So you're not bad there. This should have. So title, reporter, and TRT up here, right? So that is the way that we usually do that. So lots of problems. Was that constructive enough for you, Nick? Sorry about that. All right.
Actually, she has some.
Yes, definitely. Shannon.
I don't really think the lockout at the very end is the meat on sale is appropriate for this application. This was a news assignment. It is comedic. I just think that's not really appropriate given the content and the application of this exercise. I'm not saying you can't be funny, but in the future, let's avoid objectifying anybody or making jokes like that. That goes for everybody. I'm not picking on you. It's just, I think that would be a more constructive environment.
Fair enough. Well said. Jenny, your hand is up.
I had a question. So lowercase with the quotes.
Yes.
So essentially in Courier, and then say, for example, zombie, no. Even if blah, 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 blah. That would be in lowercase.
Yep. Was written in the thing that I read out before we began reading. Yep. So
Did I have done voices for the people then?
I mean, you're writing a script, right? So what you're trying to do is you're writing things as though they are.
I'd read mine, but I can't display it.
Yeah. Well, one sec, Kyle, because Nick has a reasonable question. So you're not doing voices. I mean, you're extracting quotes that are actualities from a written document, and we're just basically assuming that you were there as a reporter and you were able to record those. And then in your script, you're basically taking those actualities and writing around them. You know, if you went there and you got somebody saying, even if it's Halloween, this is shocking, they've gone too far, you want to use that actuality, and you want to write something that will, in your lead, right, because we talked about how important leads are, in your lead, you're going to want to set the context so that people know where this is, as you've done, Korean theme park, Lottie World, That should also be, is that Lottie or Lot? You read it Lot?
That's the way it's.
Right. You need to tell the anchor that that's the way it should be said. So something should be in there about, okay, this is the way we say that. There you go. And we don't use those things in the actual piece unless we're going to an actuality. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty there to work with already. But fundamentally, and you're not the first person who's attacked this assignment, and it's like, come away thinking, well, what exactly were we doing there again? So we're writing the script for basically for somebody to read and play on the air. Let's go to Kyle and then Jenny.
So, just like if it wouldn't take too much changing for like putting in the actuality, right? As if it were just like, guests were outraged, and
No, you wouldn't.
this person had this to say, and then
Yes.
he put that quote. That would essentially kind of, that's how you redo that problem.
Absolutely. So you can't obviously redo the quote because that's your actuality, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you keep the quote the same, just like you said, but the way you set it up changes a little bit. That's right. You can't just, Nick goes into the quote, guests were outraged saying, even if it's, so that doesn't quite work for radio, right? You'd have one guest was outraged, stop, and then you play their tape, So it's just a slightly different way of setting it up when you're actually doing it to be heard on the radio or in a podcast or on YouTube or wherever, So basically you're starting to learn about working with tape, with how to take a sound bite and set it up so that it works for you. Other comment? Jenny, your hand was up. Yeah.
I just wanted to backtrack a little bit to the reader, my reader, with regard to attribution that I forgot. How would I put it in there?
Well, you usually want to get it away, get it done with as soon as you can, or as economically as possible. So in my examples, I always say the San Francisco Examiner reports, and that's it. You've attributed.
Like maybe start it out from the very beginning?
You can do that sometimes, yeah. What you'll have to do, in this case, Nick's source is anonymous, but often in a news story, you've got to identify who's talking, right? So Nick tells us, just in general, it was a guest. But what if, in this case, Lottie World staff has responded. So you could say Lottie World staff responds. So that's a form of attribution too, right? Before you actually play the actuality, actual, you want to say who we're going to hear usually. Remember, that was some advice. I mean, there's so much coming at you all at the same time, but typically in radio, because you are hearing this and you have no opportunity to go back and listen to it again, or even if it's a podcast, you're not going to back up. So usually when you're playing an actuality, you want to say who it is. So attribution first, and then actuality. And the exception that we heard in some of the examples that we were listening to were sometimes you can start a mini actuality, attribute a little bit of the way in, and then do the rest of the actuality. So in this case, you could play something, you could say, Korean woman in a meat package with a price of 450 won. You could stop there. You could play the actuality. Even if it's Halloween, this is shocking. Then you come in with attribution. Guest XYZ was outraged at the sexism and cruelty of this, exhibit or something. And then you could go back and play the rest of it. They've gone too far or something like that, and then go back into your thing. So you can also go actuality, attribution, actuality sometimes. But the rule typically is you want your audience pretty quickly to know who they're listening to. That's the rule there. Cool. Next one up. Yes, Nika? Okay. Oh, no, JP was on base. All right. What do you want, reader or rap, JP?
Rap.
Rap. All right. We like the raps because they're more complicated. And where are we? Here we go.
Was mine's more of a reader or rap?
This was supposed to be a rap. It had a quote in it. But you actually wound up quoting within a reader, which is something that occasionally happens, but not that often. All right, we got the slug in the top left. Muir Woods Reservations, JP Mackey. Total runtime, 45. Take it away, JP.
You may want to plan ahead for your trip to Muir Woods, reporter J.P. Mackey explains. 6,000 people flock to the popular Muir Woods on a busy day, but according to SFK, this can lead to traffic backups and illegal parking. Cecily Muldoon, the park's general superintendent, shares the tourist sentiment. A visit to Muir Woods should be about the peace of the redwoods, not a battle for parking. Starting next year, you'll need a reservation to park your car or ride a shuttle bus into Muir Woods. The park expects people to make 500 to 900 parking reservations daily and 100,000 shuttle reservations annually. According to Muldoon, this will contribute to a peaceful atmosphere and protect nature. Muir Woods, J.P. Mackey, KJSF News.
Cool. That seems to hit all the major requirements. Where do you see JP doing what we were hoping? Or Shannon, do you have some other insights you want to share with us?
The information is super good. There's just a couple extra words in there that kind of reduce the impact a little. Like instead of, the park expects people to make 500 to 900 parking reservations daily, it could say the park's expecting 500 to 900 parking reservations daily. Or since we're already talking about parking, you don't have to say the word parking. So like just tighter sentences would make this pack an even bigger punch, but it's really good.
It's because there's not just parking reservations, there's also
Yeah,
bus
yeah.
reservations.
Cool. So let me just run through how this does what a rap should do. Sorry, we got the slug. We've got the anchor who is softly setting up JP. So you may want to plan ahead for your trip to Muir Woods. Simple, but it works. Then we got reporter JP identified, right? We're supposed to identify when he comes in, 6,000 people flock, blah, blah, blah. And actuality, Muldoon, correctly identified as well, per format. A visit to Muir Woods should be about the piece, yeah. Total runtime there. Back to JP, so when we switch back to someone else, we want to know that that's the case. And, a nice summary, which also, JP is doing something journalistically careful here, which is great, which again, according to Muldoon, this will contribute to a peaceful atmosphere and protect nature. There's nothing controversial about that, but rather than editorialize himself, he, again, puts Muldoon back. We're getting information from her. So nicely done. And then the lockout from Muir Woods, JP Mackey, KJSF. Yeah, so great job. Great job. Other thoughts about this one now that you're looking at it? Okay. Nika, you wanted to do one, right?
Let's do my reader.
Alrighty. Go for it.
Ottoman's Sixth Army retreated back from Persia after sound defeats at the hands of Russian cavalry, who have now captured Mosul. According to the Associated Press, British forces in Gaza were prevented from joining the Russians in attacking the fleeing Ottomans due to fog, but the Turkish forces were defeated all the same. This victory allows Russian forces in the Middle East to receive supplies from the Persian Gulf, a much easier route than the current route that crosses through the mountains in the Caucasus.
There you go.
What's the reporter dressed in?
Jawed purse. Jawed purse. Okie doke. According to the Associated Press. Yeah. Yeah. Wire service in the second paragraph. Yeah. So you don't have to do it right at the top of the story. And that's equally as efficient as saying the Associated Press reports. Maybe a couple of little extra words there. Yeah. So when was this actually contemporary to?
1917.
1917. There you go. It's like we could have a special news edition for News of the Times, I guess.
That's nice.
Alrighty. So I was simply so confused by the time thing that I wasn't really like absorbing all the content, but sounds fine.
We've just been talking about
JP?
I want to mention, British forces in Gaza were prevented from joining the Russians due to fog, I would have said in active voice, the fog prevented British forces in Gaza from.
Good point. Good point. We move on. Okay, so your slug doesn't look great, but
My slug doesn't look great, but
yep.
no, I was going to put it on the second page.
Okay, well, let's do it.
All right. Welcome to the Nightly Report. 2 looters were arrested in Florida after they were caught on camera. KGKL's Chrissy Snow has the story. Fort Lauderdale police arrested 2 looters in Weston, Florida after the homeowners, watching remotely, saw them breaking into their home, according to USA Today. One of the looters was wounded when shot by a deputy, the sheriff's office said. Can't see. I'm sorry, can you scroll it up?
Yep, here it comes.
Looting is a major concern for residents during mandatory evacuations, and the strong winds that Irma is causing have prompted temporary withdrawal of some public agencies from the city streets, making property vulnerable. Fort Lauderdale Police Chief Rick Maglione said in a statement, "Going to prison over a pair of sneakers is a fairly bad life decision." A curfew was issued on Saturday with the intention of reducing the risk of looting in Broward County. This is Chrissy Snow for KJKL News. Now, from seeing other people's, I see also that I probably should have put like his name pronounced the way the reporter might want to read it, because it's a kind of a tough.
Maglione?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And same like Broward County, because she had it in hers.
I mean, I may just be so out of touch with current news that I don't know.
That literally happened on Sunday. So.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it may be that with so much reporting about Florida that everyone knows how to pronounce it, and I'm just like,
It's off the map.
I was under a rock for the whole weekend, right?
No.
No, but you know, that's, so yeah. So cool. As I was listening to it, I thought, this sounds really good. I felt that your anchor lead was too specific here. It kind of steals the lead from you. So I would say go less specific on that point. You know, even if it's something like more news on trouble after the hurricane or something like that, you're not stealing the hard news from your reporter's lead, which is that 2 looters are, you know, arrested and such. So
Okay.
that weakens that a little bit.
Like less BuzzFeed, where they just try to suck you in right away.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, you have the opportunity in a broadcast like this for the anchor to either, I mean, to try other methods of sucking you in rather than just giving the information. You know, a little wordplay. I'm never good at making something clever up, but you know, that's the place for it. To sort of softly move in versus a hard lead where you give the information. Okay, the only other thing I found is quite a long sentence here, which you know, you might have broken up at some point. That's all. I don't know how many. That's 33 words. So I mean, that's still, it's still readable, but you know, it's on the long side of a medium length sentence.
Okay.
And so you're getting close to the point where it's a really good idea to break it and create, you know, a smaller sentence. Yeah. I guess.
This is less format, more content. It's kind of concerning when like you hear that a deputy shot one of these people, and it doesn't feel like that was expanded on further. That like if they were, you know, actually armed and fighting back, or like they were
The
shot.
story itself had no other information except that. That's all it said.
Okay.
It didn't say any details. I thought the same thing, but that's kind of
Just
what
a
my
little
main complaint
concerning.
with news these days is that they're so quick to put stories out that they throw stuff out there to get your attention, but there's hardly ever anything else. There's no substance. So that was one of those stories.
Yeah, this guy could have been just like trying to get soup for his family and got shot.
You know,
for
this
wears.
story actually went into more about other looters and to touch nothing on the shooting itself, just other looters stealing other stuff and how 9 people were arrested total, and you know, it went on about that, but it didn't really say anything about the guy being shot. And you know, he's not dead, that's all I know.
All right.
Yeah, I'd just say given the time constraints, you're often, and plus if you don't have that information, how could you volunteer it anyway? So, you know, I'd say it would be a typical reflex of the news to report the, you know, if they had a choice between describing 20 different looting incidents, the one where somebody got shot is the one they would use, you know, because it's that much more eye-grabbing. So I think that's a commercial instinct, you know, that's a news instinct there. You didn't have more information. I mean, if you were writing locally and you had access to the actual sources and you had, you know, plenty of time to expand, then I'd say, yeah, probably a number of people were thinking the way Nika was. So yeah, it's like, oh, they shot somebody, like, you know. So yeah.
They had his mugshot, though.
It fits with a narrative. They had a mugshot as well?
Yeah. Well, one thing I wasn't sure, because it had like a picture on Twitter that the police made a comment that I thought was interesting, but I was unsure about how to format that into this, so I omitted it altogether. But they did have a mugshot that the police posted on Twitter, and then it said something like, you know, we told you so, if you go out and loot something, this is what's going to happen.
Police did that?
Yeah, so I wasn't sure how to word that in there, but
Oh my God.
I was,
Well,
so I left it out.
sounds extremely unprofessional.
Yeah.
But
Hashtag
who
and
knows, right?
whatever county.
Hashtag payback. Payback, the dirty rat, or whatever. Gosh. All right. Thank you. Good job. So that had the essentials, you know, from the leads to the lockout to the.
Now, one question I have, because I notice everybody else is actually typing out TRT. So do you have to type that out like in broadcasting and also put the time code? Because I just typed 30
Not a time code. You're just supposed to do a TRT for the actuality.
For the
down there.
actuality.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And this would vary depending on the station that you're working with. But we put it in because we're putting. It's kind of like throwing everything in the pot so that we've got, you know, a messy thing to cook. Shannon, did you want to say something?
No, I just want to read.
Oh, you want to read? Okay.
For the actuality, like the rest,
Right. Well, you know, your slug is supposed to have the length at the top.
the
Right.
slug is the total runtime, but then when you put in the actuality, you put in the runtime strictly for that actuality.
Exactly right. And this is good slug here. The title would never be that long in an actual broadcast script because they appear on the lineup as well that you know the director actually sees. So that might just be you know, accelerating truck or something like that. So you're Jack Tripper, are you?
That's Chrissy Snow, so
Okay.
nobody
All
else
right.
can get that joke because we're too.
Gotcha. Okay. So this should say TRT, so we know it's 45.
Yeah, that's what I was asking about, is if it should say TRT and
Yeah.
00.4, you know, or :45.
Again, that would be so specific to the place. Good, and thank you for putting in that, although that wasn't required, but that's always good to be able to find these things too. Nice. Okay, again, you wouldn't do that in a news organization, but you wouldn't be cannibalizing, you wouldn't overtly be cannibalizing newspapers. You'd maybe find your stories and then make your calls, and sort of,
Oh,
but
no.
there'd be one extra step. Pardon me?
CBS does that all the time off the Examiner, and they don't say that we got it from the Examiner, but they'll quote like Joe Fitzgerald Rodriguez in a personal interview with somebody the data that they gave. Like, no, you have to do that. So he writes letters to the director a lot.
I bet he does. Dirty pool. Not good.
No.
Okay, so who's up? Who's up?
Can I go?
Yes, Shannon.
Rapper reader.
Whichever one you prefer.
Weasels or whales?
Weasels.
Weasels. All right.
I was going to say whales. Weasels are fine. So which is weasels? A rarely seen weasel.
wrap.
Okay.
A rarely seen weasel has been spotted in the Bay Area. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, caretakers of the peninsula's Filoli estate have spotted a long-tailed weasel on its grounds. The weasels are native to the area, but they're so hard to spot that many people have never seen one. Jim Salyards, director of horticulture at Filoli, says the reappearance is likely due to an increase in a main source of food. We suspect it arrived because of an outbreak of voles this year, he told the Chronicle, referring to ground-dwelling rodents that are hunted by the area's weasels, as well as foxes, coyotes, and great horned owls. Visitors to Filoli Gardens can try to catch a glimpse of the rodent beginning September 23rd, when the property's estate trail opens for self-guided hikes. For CCSF News, this is Shannon Cole. I
Cool.
realized I forgot TRT for the actuality,
The actuality there.
and I forgot a word, but my brain provided it.
Oh, the
while I was reading
actuality
it.
part in the front saying who said it too, right?
Remember, it should be in square brackets.
Oh, yeah.
Act Jim. Yeah. So should go act Jim Salyards and then play the actuality. Yeah. Okay. So definitely a few.
You have a great
Formatting.
newscaster's voice, by the way.
Thank you for practicing.
Comments, anyone? Nika.
I think for the part talking about voles and what else they're eaten by could be cut down a bit in kind of the mid-paragraph.
I'm surprised you squeezed it in 45 seconds.
Like referring to ground-dwelling rodents that are local to the area could have been said, and maybe the rest could have been left out, but it's not pressing.
Okay.
I think it's in there because before I cut it down, there was more info about how weasels, foxes, and owls are all abundant right now because of these voles. But you're right; it does seem extraneous.
Okay. Fair enough. Nika would like to read. Are we reading the reader or the rap? The reader? Okay. Go for it, Nika.
Development has begun on a new affordable housing project in the San Francisco neighborhood, the Tenderloin. According to the San Francisco Examiner, the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Committee has started construction on a building that will provide 113 units. These units are made to accommodate families and homeless and will include bike storage, laundry, and other on-site services. The TNDC has been trying to make this project a reality for 10 years, but faces difficulties thanks to the housing market crash and the elimination of redevelopment agencies.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm interested to hear what other people think. I got tangled up in the San Francisco neighborhood, the Tenderloin. I think we could have turned that around to make that a little easier.
San Francisco's Tenderloin, maybe?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Araceli. That makes a lot of sense. The Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Committee is great. Unfortunately, the next time it comes up, we can't turn it into an acronym TNDC. So we might, rather than doing that, we could simply say the committee has been trying to make this project a reality for 10 years, but faced difficulties thanks to the, maybe not thanks to the housing market, because that sounds like it's kind of a positive, versus I think we'd say face difficulties due to the housing market, maybe. The housing market crash, the elimination.
You can't do TNDC?
No, you can't. No, it's a lot better in radio or any kind of oral presentation like this. Instead of going to the acronym, go to the committee. Because people not familiar with the story may not remember that you talked about the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Committee and sounded out in their heads, oh, that would be TNDC, right? So when this comes up at the bottom, you risk losing them, versus they did hear committee. So if you just say the committee has been trying, you're much more likely to just get the information across. And rather, if this was a longer piece and you had to keep saying it, you know, you can use slight variations of the committee or the development committee or the neighborhood development committee or whatever. So you can kind of you can modify it a little bit further down to avoid repetition if necessary. These are so short, you don't have to. But
I was thinking back to my reader, because the Animal Rescue Foundation, if you were to put that into an acronym, I pronounce it as ARF. So would it be better if I said foundation?
No, in that case, because the AP style for radio basically says, if it's well known enough, like the FBI, the CIA, or something like that, or ARF, which of course, you know, I just assume I don't know anything.
They do market themselves as ARF.
As ARF, you know. So at that point, you can go with that. That's you know, it's so cute too. I mean, it's awesome. What a good idea, ARF.
They send out the cutest calendars to their donors every year. They're so adorable. I have so many cute address labels with puppies that say ARF.
I don't know. I see the objectification of puppies here, though. You should be careful. You've got to be careful.
I'm sorry, puppies.
They're on calendars. Okie doke. Thank you, Shannon. Is anyone monitoring Shannon defending herself on chat?
Yeah.
Yes.
She said thank you for the feedback on the TNDC thing, because it was drove her crazy when she was writing it.
Oh wow.
And also Enrique volunteers as tribute.
And so did Akira.
And Akira. Did she? Oh,
Okay.
Akira.
Awesome. Well, let's go to Enrique and then Akira. This is fun. People volunteering on chat. And who is Enrique's reader?
I'll read.
You'll read. Thank you, Nick. And I think he wants the reader or the rap. Did he say?
I don't know, there's some latency in chat too. So.
It doesn't.
Reader.
The reader he wants. Okay, because I was going to take the moment to diss chat there. It's like it doesn't scroll. It's just ridiculous. Nick, slug line, major earthquake in Mexico, and so on. So you're going to read?
Yep. I can go here. Oh, that's a big head. Not you, Nika. Don't worry. Last night in Oaxaca, Mexico, an 8.2 magnitude earthquake hit the Mexican west coast with a powerful 5.7 and 5.2 aftershocks within the state. According to Yahoo 7 News, According to Yahoo 7 News, the fatalities have increased to 32. The possibility of a hazardous tsunami which would affect the Central American coast were discarded not until several hours after the quake. The Mexican president has called it the biggest earthquake in Mexico in a century.
Thank you, Nick. Brings me back to those SNL skits where it was like for the hard of hearing. Do you remember? Have you ever seen those? There's like a little round circle, and you're expecting someone to sign, and instead they just shout. They shout it out.
Just saw Family Guy. They referenced that joke.
They referenced that.
Garrett Morris, right?
Yes, it was Garrett Morris. That's right. He was fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so thoughts for Enrique? I mean, clearly he's working with the the English is not his first language, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong through chat. Spank me. But I believe what we're looking at is somebody doing their best in their second language to report the facts in the news, right? So that said, what did you guys think? It seemed quite efficient to me.
I would put a comma next to the Yahoo 7 News because, like, when I think Yahoo, I think of well, Yahoo is a website, but Yahoo 7 News, it's like, what am I reading? It's like, like a comma right next to the news.
I mean, the other thing is an announcer would simply read the script over once as quick as they could, and they would identify that as, one nugget.
Could you bold that or underline it to ensure?
Again, it depends on the news system that's used at the studio. We don't allow bolds here, so you could set it off in quotation marks. But that's something I think an announcer would pick up that way. Of course, it would be embarrassing if they didn't. Pardon me?
If they notate their scripts, wouldn't
Yeah.
they note that too?
That's what I meant. Yeah. I mean, it's rare that they don't have even a second to go through it and actually
Highlighted
write that down. Yeah, they would see that coming. JP.
I would say, how do you pronounce Oaxaca?
Yeah, I was mystified by that.
How would you do it though? How would you
I thought Nick sounded really credible.
Yeah.
Oaxaca.
Know how they pronounce it.
Yeah.
Online, Carmen has spelled it phonetically JUA-HA-KA, like Juan, like you say Juan.
But then somebody might think it's a hard J.
Oaxaca.
Yeah. W-A.
I would have done W, yeah.
So you
W-A-H.
guys would go like something like Oaxaca or something like that.
And now it's Hawaiian.
Exactly, which would probably, that's true. The reader at least would be a little bit confused. Yeah.
The Mexico pronunciation too was spot on.
Thank you. I try my.
There's potential. BCST 115. Yes, Nika.
I think the area around not until could be cleaned up a bit. It could be the possibility of a hazardous tsunami which would affect the Central American coast was considered until several hours after the quake. It seems like asking for weird pauses with the commas.
Got you.
Word
Yeah.
discarded was passive.
Let's see. How could we say that? Fears that a dangerous tsunami could follow were eventually, put to rest several hours after the quake. Something like that. I'm not sure. So Akira
What's the rap?
wants the rap. So it's the rap?
Yes.
Okay. Go for it.
The East Bay Gay Men's Chorus kicked off the festivities at the new Oakland LGBTQ Community Center on Lakeshore Ave. KGO's Akira has the story. Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf cut the ribbon for the center that will provide a wide range of services, including mental health, substance abuse counseling, and transgender advocacy. This center gives hope and assistance to people, a home in our city. What the center doesn't have is funding. Right now, we're funding it out of our pockets. There was a surprise gift, a check from the AIDS Healthcare Foundation for $10,000 and another for $1,000 from Oakland Pride. The donation is a big help. Until Oakland's LGBTQ Center can hire employees, 200 volunteers have stepped up to help. This is Akira Jackson reporting for KGO.
Nice job.
Libby. Okay, yeah. Libby.
Sounds like the news. Sorry, what were you checking?
I was checking Libby's attribution because I read her name so fast that I didn't.
Isn't that our mayor?
Oakland Mayor.
Yeah, I live in
Awesome.
Oakland, so she's my mayor.
Oh, that's
JP?
I also want to mention that she was missing the Hawkins acquisition as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Do we know who Jose Hawkins is?
Oh, yeah, I didn't read that. I think it's when you scrolled, I think it missed it. Yeah, who's
Oh, no, oh, you read this.
I
Oh,
did.
you read it. Yeah, you read it, but it's
Say who
I also like how you increased $1,000 to $4,000.
yeah. So Akira's not obliged to, for instance, state the name of Jose Hawkins. I guess if it's not central to her story, she can just play, somebody who's going to make her point for her. So that's okay. But I understand why it came up, because you'd say, well, to be really thorough, we should have, activist Jose Hawkins tells us, or something like that. Yeah, Jenny?
If you would scroll back up to the slug, would that be considered somewhat long?
Yeah, but it's pretty minor. But yeah, it could be just LGBTQ community center opens or something like that. Yeah, but what we're looking at is the great job she's done at constructing her story here. Yeah, Shannon?
I think just reading it, it's a little hard to picture, but I totally see where she was going and like reinforcing the point with Jose, bringing him in to be like, we don't have money. So like, had this been shot instead of read, I think it would have been really impactful.
I wonder if it was a video script first. Is this? I wonder. Could you guys ask Akira if this was actually something she produced? It sounds kind of like it is, but yeah.
Also at the top, she said Lakeshore Ave.
Yes. Okay. So again, it would sound better if she'd said Lakeshore Avenue. Yeah. Yeah. It's again, there is if you just think, okay, how would I say this to somebody? We'll go over to Lakeshore Avenue, or it's on Lakeshore Avenue instead of Lakeshore Ave. So you're reading a script to be read. So yeah, I saw you kind of jump, and I thought JP has a point. Sounds kind of funny. Okay, does Akira have any responses, or is she still there?
She's here.
Oh, I'm glad she's living her moment of glory through streaming.
I think that's good too, because a lot of folks don't necessarily want to read out loud.
That's true. Yeah, so you can stay home and have somebody else read for you. Okay, excellent. Well, these are always the times that I enjoy the most. Although I know sometimes you may feel that it's the criticism is, well, while constructive, may still be kind of like, ooh. But I think as we go forward and we get more of your excellent work, we'll see we're all just learning, and if you forgot a little thing or it wasn't clear what exactly you're supposed to do, next steps forward, it'll be more clear, And we pretty much build on these types of things. Like a reader written for video is very, it's no different than a reader written for radio. And there are TV story types which resemble raps, and we'll be writing them in similar ways. So this will become more clear as we go along, and we had some excellent examples here. I think at the end of the day, everybody has a better idea of what we're shooting for after seeing this type of group discussion. Yeah.
I have a question from a non-English speakers. Is it easy for you guys to read from capital letter? Is it very difficult for me?
I see what you mean. Yeah, there's a lot of debate. There's some news organizations go sentence case all the way. Others are still in caps, all caps. So yeah, I could see how if it was not your first language, that it's that much harder to see where the sentences are chunked and all of that. Yeah. So.
Can't read non-capital any language.
We don't have
Okay, let's. I want in the remaining time to discuss with you the upcoming assignment due next week, because there's a week of time, which is plenty. But if we put this off, there'll be that much less time for you to come up with some interesting story ideas. 2 story ideas. Okay, so let me first give you the context to this assignment. This is the first assignment in a string of original reporting assignments that are worth more in this course than the reader and the rap, for instance, because you're actually gathering the information yourselves. If I look ahead to that string of assignments, next week I'm asking you for 2 story ideas, and we'll go into depth about that as soon as I finish my intro. The week after, I believe, there may be a week or 2, I'll ask you for interview questions, because I want you to interview someone who is active in the story idea that you pick from the 2 that you bring next week. The week after that, or some short delayed time after that, you'll take sound bites from that interview and write what is basically a long rap, which is a feature radio script of your own. So it's gonna, we'll talk about that when that's the time. But basically, that'll be the first actual, script that you will have written out of this reporting. Then a few weeks later, I'll ask you to rewrite that as a television package. So from the same reporting, same interview, but adding extra information, a second source, and of course visual information, you'll write a TV package. And then a couple weeks after that, we'll learn about adapting TV packages for the web, and I'll ask you to adapt that story for the web. Okay, so you can see this is the beginning of an extended kind of original reporting series in this course. It's not the only thing we do. Occasionally we do smaller stuff like the reader wrap again while you are long-term working on your next reporting thing. Some people feel kind of pressured. It's like, oh, he's asking me for story ideas right now. Like, is it going to be good enough for me to want to write about it all the way through the course? Rest assured that you can change. Eventually, if you kind of run full out of steam on something you want to report on, you can report on something else for some of those later assignments. That's okay, all right? For now, what I'm asking for is only 2 paragraphs, okay? Each paragraph would have a fact-based story, but this is not something you find in the newspaper. This is something that you go out and report on yourself. So you must be able to interview someone about each of these stories so that you can write them into a radio script in the next 3 weeks. So there's no use, coming up with a great story idea where there's nobody that you could reliably interview. All right, so already that sets aside some things that you're thinking of doing. But yeah, so 1 story should be about an event, something that's happening, and 1 story should be a profile, somebody interesting who's doing something interesting. Okay, and I'm going to ask you, after you come up with your 2 story ideas and we talk about them next Tuesday, I'm going to ask you to choose whichever one you feel is your best bet and go forward with that and have the second story just as a kind of a backup. So if you find yourself leaning towards one of the 2 stories, that's okay. That's fine. What typically happens sometimes is, you start out on one, the interview falls through, but you have a backup, right? You have plan B, your second story. If you love the 2 stories, you could start out reporting on one and later in the semester switch to the other. It'd be fine by me. But for next Tuesday, 2 paragraphs, one about an event, either it recently happened or it's about to happen. We're looking ahead three weeks about. So if it's something that's going to happen in the next 3 weeks and you happen to know somebody involved, fantastic. Or if you don't know somebody involved, even better. You can approach, somebody officially connected to that event. All right. It really comes off as kind of lame to interview someone who's basically a non-knowledgeable bystander or something. So as you consider the stories you want to do, think, don't think, well, my roommate sometimes goes down there and does yoga. It's like, what you want instead is, can I get in touch with a person organizing it, right? Or is there, do they need security and my friend's a security guard, they're going to be working on it, or whatever, or not your friend. I know some courses say don't use friends or family because journalists can't live just calling their friends and family, right? But it's a good enough start, all right? So an event happening in the next few weeks, or a profile of a person not necessarily connected to the event, okay? So we have had stories. I had a nice story about a guy, an old guy who organized the kids in his neighborhood to sell lemonade and basically just started his own sort of like neighborhood, get the kids off the street doing something type of thing. And the student who wrote the story was always interested in that guy, didn't know who he was, just wanted to find out, like, what are the motivations? Why does somebody do that, One of the examples I'll show you later on, Leland student here did farmer's market, so he, that was an event. So he interviewed farmer at the market, organizer of the event, that kind of stuff. All right? Yeah, Araceli?
So, can you do something of somebody that you recently interviewed? Or does it have to be somebody you interview in the future? Because I work for SF TV and I interview people all the time.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule that out if that's, you find it, that's an event that would.
I've got like my folder full of stuff I haven't even gone through.
Yeah. Now.
That's not exclusive to them because when you do work for them, they own their.
Yeah, but I think in
Good
this
idea.
particular case, it would probably be fine.
The other thing is you're going to have to create interview questions, which means you need a focus.
Oh, I have.
You have the focus. Okay, I mean, that's not a no-brainer. A lot of people go and you've got 15 questions, you ask the questions, you cut it together, and, it's done, right? But that's certainly not going to lead to as successful a story as already knowing what it is that you kind of want to, why are you talking to this person before you go? What kind of story do you hope will emerge out of it? I mean, as you know, because you're working in the field, broadcast journalists don't just walk out the door and say, I'm going to talk to so-and-so. What do you think? And then work it out there. You usually know exactly what you need before you go. So, the fact, here you're going to be coming up with questions and the interview's already done. So figure how that's going to work. But, yeah.
Well, I had to come up with the questions before the interview because I had to do my scripting and all the pre-production. So.
Right. You have anything coming up?
Do I have anything that's released coming up?
No, I mean anything that you're working on that you have to write about. There is one thing
that I'm going to be doing with the Transbay Terminal and the woman in charge, the program director.
So that's not even done yet.
That's one of my second ideas.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, cool. So so far so good. No problems. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and also because I want to make sure this is just something that is not going to air. It's just for homework assignments, or is it?
Well, we write scripts, right? Unless we can air scripts, we can't. No, so we never perform them. We never record them.
They're not to be performed and put somewhere else.
Unless you want to do it on your own.
I have to go through PR with the transfer.
Yeah, of course. If that's all up to you.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I've had occasions where I had to go through PR even in an academic circumstance. They just wouldn't let you talk directly to somebody without a third person on the line. So,
this is going to end up being a video, by the way, but
sweet.
I have to come.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, you're just working on an interview for somebody. Yes, Nick.
So we could do it over the phone, or
yes, you could. It has successfully been done through social media as well. So we had a great story about a student who was concerned by the national student debt issue. She was really incensed that there's like $1 billion of student debt out there. And she had a very interesting way of approaching the story because she knew from, she used to live in Michigan. She knew someone whose daughter had just graduated high school and had a full scholarship to State University because there's a little town in Michigan where some anonymous person has left a pile of money Anybody who graduates high school with a decent GPA gets their college paid for 100%. You know, so she interviewed. She could have just phoned them up as well, but she interviewed by social media instead, just to get the story. But I thought that was a brilliant way into, you know, we all would like to work on a huge issue like that. She had a very nice human way in, you know. Shannon?
If you wanted to do interviews with someone who's not here, Tape a Call is an app you can get on phones.
Oh, cool.
Or use Google's
Google-
meeting features.
They have on Hangouts,
Yeah,
there's
Google
an option
Hangouts.
to record too.
You can record that. When I record podcasts with people who aren't here, that's what we use to make sure we don't talk over each other.
What is the Google version?
Google Hangouts, and then you said what was the other one?
The chat line.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it by heart, but you can easily find out by researching
Okay.
how to record a call.
And Skype is another option. It tends to suck, but there's something called Blue Jean, which I suggest you check out. The connection is a lot better. It's free, and it has a recording app built into it. So, but when doing that type of thing, I really suggest you use a headset with a microphone instead of like trying to talk into the computer, where talking over each other just makes it a really crappy kind of thing. But remember, you're recording here for your record, not in order to actually cut it up and put it on the air. So you shouldn't be concerned about getting broadcast quality because we're just writing scripts based on this. But recording is, you know, we'll talk about it when we talk about interviewing. I mean, it's really important just to get a good document out of what you're doing. Nick?
How long does the story have to be?
I'm asking for one paragraph each here. So I'm assuming that if you're going to tell me about an event, you could make a 30-second or you could make a 30-minute about an event. It really, that kind of thing will come later. So I give you a prompt here about if you're going to report on an event, these are things that you should think about. Like, okay, who, what, where, when is this event happening? Where would you find some background information? What do you think will happen at the event? Who are the people who you could talk to? So either an organizer or whatever. You will need to actually interview one of these people in the next 2 weeks. Who will it be? Okay, so this is really, this is a decisive thing. You got to interview somebody. So it's no use having a great story when you can't get the person that you need to talk to. What is the significance of the event to your audience? Why should they care about this? Okay, so usually you can find some kind of justification for it, but just think about it. Describe what you will need to do to cover in the event and write a news story about it. So that's just like, again, reality is you've got to do this in 2 weeks. So what'll it be? All right, and there are similar types of things about the profile. You know, who's the person? How do you have access? Why should we care about this person and what they do? What's the theme? You know, especially profiles. They usually have some kind of theme, overcoming adversity. I mean, that's a really common one, whether it's economic, physical, you know, or just life dealt you a bad hand, you know, and so on and so forth. So you could already be thinking about why that story is compelling already.